Brandon Saho, founder, creator, host of The Mental Game.
What inspired you to create the mental game?
I think it was my own journey. I had no plans to do this. It was something that, you know, mental health for me, I battled my entire life, and no one really knew from 14 when I had that first suicidal thought to, uh, you know, 2.5 years ago when I had the dream job of being a sports reporter and being on the field in the NFL, and no one knew that I was struggling on the inside. And so it wasn't really a choice for me. It felt like a calling and a new purpose. And after I, checked myself into a facility for mental health treatment for a couple of weeks and went back to work, I realized this is the new passion that I have. How can we combine journalism and mental health? And so that's how the mental game was born. I never thought in a million years I do anything but sports. But this is truly like the favorite chapter of my life, even though it came from a very painful, chapter and series and book really of 15 years of pain. This is definitely the best thing that could have ever happened to me for sure.
Can you tell me a little bit about your mental health journey?
Yeah, I struggled really early on with just this feeling of being alone that I thought that no one else felt, and we didn't talk about it. This would have been in 2006, 2007. I mean, we weren't talking about mental health at all. Definitely not, on a podcast or on TV or anything like that. And so I kind of always held it in. And so I, just internalized those feelings from high school to college to being a young adult. I was someone that always struggled with being single and wanting that dream relationship and marriage and all the, picket fence, house, kids, all that jazz. And it just didn't happen for me. And so I got to a moment in my life about 3 years ago where I thought that was happening. I found who I thought was the love of my life. I had this dream job in sports television and everything was happening right. And then it all came crashing down over a 3-month period where I had 3 family members pass away, including my cousin Ben, who's basically my brother. He had a heart attack at 31. All this pressure on me at work because the Bengals were going to the Super Bowl and I was reporting on them. And I'm a Cincinnati guy, so that was like a dream come true. But a lot of work, the deaths in the family, and then that relationship just was really, looking back now, toxic. And the breakup was awful. And it all came crashing down where I was suicidal every second of every day for 3 months. And it got to a point where after the Super Bowl, I had to go to my mom at 28 years old and be like, hey, Mom, look, you don't know this. No one knows this, but I don't want to live anymore. I don't know how to live anymore. I need help. And so that's where I kind of hit that rock bottom in 2022 where I had no choice but to check myself into a treatment facility for mental health.
What was it like telling your story publicly for the first time?
I didn't really think about it when I first did it. It was so I wasn't on TV for like 2.5 weeks, and you work in that biz, so like people might think there's a scandal or you're fired, whatever.
Right.
I just put out a letter on like Instagram and Twitter and Facebook saying the story that I just told you of me struggling since 14, those nights walking on a bridge, thinking about laying down in traffic, writing a goodbye letter, sobbing my eyes out, and I just kind of wrote that in a 4-page letter and put it on socials, and I just did it because I wanted people to know what was going on with me, and I had that's what made me want to do what I'm doing now, because I saw the reaction of other people that felt like me or supported what I was going through, or maybe they've gone to therapy, they've checked into the hospital, all the way up to like people from, I had people in Boston, other states, or Massachusetts, other states, reaching out and being like, hey, I didn't know who you were, but I saw this on Instagram, now I'm going to go get help. It was like, okay, if this little sports reporter from Cincinnati might be able to help a handful of people, what if I get those athletes, those celebrities that I work with to talk about it? And so that's all where it came from. But yeah, it was super not planned at the beginning. Now it's kind of crazy because my whole life is on the internet. Like you can find everything but my ex's name on there. And so I'll be, speaking out of college or doing an event, and somebody will like bring something up that even I forgot about my life now, where it's all out there. I there was one that like really stuck out to me where a kid like recited my goodbye letter to me like when I met him, and I was like, I don't even remember everything that I wrote because you're in such like a terrible spot, like just giving up on life. And it was just cool to have that conversation that like for some reason for him seeing that helped him like feel like there was hope again for himself. So that part I think of the journey is cool. And that's what I feel relatable when I see somebody that posts something and I'm like, oh wait, I went through that too. It makes you feel less alone.
And I was looking at your website and your touring schedule. You're going to be everywhere. What is it like traveling and sharing this story?
It's my favorite part of what I do. I mean, people might think I'm crazy for saying that. Just like looking around at the studio because we have like pictures of every guest we've had in here, and you get to sit down with some of the most famous people and athletes in the world, and that's cool for that hour. But my favorite thing is talking and meeting people and having those conversations one on one afterwards because I'll always stay and talk as long as I can with people. And every single time that we do an event or I speak, at least one, usually multiple people come up to me and say, hey man, I'm suicidal. I don't know where to go, don't know what to do, but like I need help. And I've been that lost person before and didn't know where to go. And so our team does a great job making sure we have mental health professionals at every single event, whether it's at a high school and it's just the school psychologist or counselors, a college nonprofit in the corporate setting with HR, just because for some reason me sharing that story, whether it's with 20 people in a meeting room to 3,000 people in an arena or theater, it creates a safe space. And during it, before we talk one on one, like people ask questions in front of everyone. They ask me like about their story, and we try to just help as many people as we can. So that is my favorite thing to do. Last year I did something really crazy and stupid, but it was amazing. I drove to 30 states in 30 days and we did those events. And that's really what kickstarted this whole kind of mission of it being more than just a podcast. And it was really cool because I did it in January and February where I drove started in Kentucky, went all the way up to New York, down to Florida, over to Texas, Kansas City, back up to Chicago, and ended in Cincinnati where I'm from. And it's my favorite thing that I do because you get to hear people's stories. You can't always reply to a email or a direct message, but you can have that conversation. And that like one-on-one 3-4 minutes, that might be the first time that someone's ever opened up to anyone about their mental health. And I've been that person too. So if I can have that conversation and it helps them, or they see a clip of a celebrity talking about it on the podcast or at the event, they go, hey, my favorite athlete struggles with what I struggle with. Or I heard that guy talk about it at the school assembly. I guess I can go ask for help now. That's the best part about my job, I guess I would say.
Yeah, after you speak, what is it like getting to know people out in the field?
Yeah, it's been really, really cool. That's my favorite thing about that, I think, is watching like progress happen after the fact. Like I've been to certain colleges where maybe it was my second time there, and a student I met before like came up, and I saw how much better they were doing. They went to therapy for the first time, and they just kind of got things taken care of with their mental health they'd never done before. And on social media, like it's cool to see. That's the great thing that it connects us so like easily. Is I might not be messaging someone back and forth after I meet them, but I can see that person commenting and they can say the progress they've made, or I might get an email about that. So that's really cool to see the progress. But in the beginning, like when you meet somebody, I mean, man, I've stayed at places for 2-3 hours after an event, and I'll stay and meet everyone as long as I'm not gonna miss a flight. And the emotions that you hear, I mean, that's the saddest part. I tell people this all the time. I wish I could wear a GoPro so that I could like share what this experience has been like, because I've probably had one-on-one conversations with 2 to 3 thousand people over the last year, and you hear everything from you know sexual assault to suicide attempt from kids, adults. I mean, the worst things you can possibly hear. I've heard it, and I really, really value that time because it's a safe, vulnerable space where that vulnerability can be a strength. And again, if they didn't have this safe space for that 45 minutes, they might not ever think about their mental health before. And so for me, that's, again, I sound like a broken record, but that is my favorite thing, is having those one-on-one conversations.
No, that's huge because I live with bipolar disorder too, and talking to other people, just normal people with lived experience succeeding, goes much further than just, hearing data or stats or and all that stuff.
Yeah, I've had that's the unique thing about what we're able to do in, at companies or schools or events is that like it's been really really hard to make mental health fun. Like therapy is cool. I believe in that. That's like,
Yeah.
my favorite shirt that I have that we give away at everything, but it's really hard to make it fun. And so to find a way to like use the athletes and the celebrities, maybe draw people in that had never, really focused on their mental health. And then that's a pathway to get to that vulnerability with them. That's really, really unique. And I think that's what's made this really successful is that it's not a gimmick. It's my story, but it's also, no offense to maybe some presentations that have been done in the past, but it's not hammering with like what you said of stats
Yeah.
and maybe just this like kind of scare tactic that maybe you hear in some presentations. It's just really authentic and open, safe space.
What do you do to help your own mental health?
Uh, I try not to work. I'm kidding. I do that way too. I'm a workaholic with this, but I love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
For me, I love going outside and just going on a walk, listening to music. I think those two things together are really my like number one thing. Um, I live in Los Angeles, and I'm just looking outside because I see a cloud, which is unusual. But I'm like at the base of the Hollywood Hills, so I love going hiking and just I can be at the top of the hills in like 6 minutes with a drive. I'm not a real hiker. I go to the top and then walk around, but I can just pop in my headphones, do that, listen to music. I go to Orange Theory every day, just kind of an hour to check out and do something physical. Kevin Gates told me something that I thought was crazy in the beginning, but I actually like doing it now, called grounding. I don't know if you've done this or heard of it, but
No.
yeah, he's like explaining it to me during our interview. He's like, yeah, just go outside like barefoot and just walk around, and like you just become grounded with the earth, and it like kind of is peaceful. I'm like, I don't know about that. And now when it's, a hot summer day, I will walk around on the pavement or the grass in my backyard. But those are some of the things. I really think music is my favorite thing. It really does calm me down. I'm listening to it 24/7, and I tell people all the time that your favorite artists write those songs because they've been through something. It's their
Yeah.
coping mechanism. It's their journaling, and you relate to it because you feel that same thing. You feel that connectivity, which I think I certainly do with my favorite artists.
How does it feel for you to be helping others?
It's really cool. It's not. I mean that in like the most authentic way possible. I did it for myself in the beginning. Like this is,
Yeah.
and it still is therapy for me every time I do an interview or do an event. But going back to those conversations that I have with people in person, that is like why I do it. To hear that, you know, a high school student may have been getting bullied or going through something really traumatic in their life and never went to their school counselor until we had the mental game come to their school. That is really the things that make me smile, make me proud of what we do. I'll tell you I hate to say favorite, but just one that really really sticks out to me was I got a DM maybe like a year ago, and it was a guy probably in his 30s, and he said, "Hey man, I never sent messages like this, but I just got to let you know, you really helped me. I saw, I had a really tough time. I never told anyone I was struggling. I was suicidal. The night I was going to take my own life, I kissed my wife, kissed my daughter goodbye without them knowing. And I got in my truck and do what I always do. I listened to music on YouTube, and I was driving, to take my own life. And for some reason, I had no idea who you were, didn't know what the podcast was, but like your podcast came up as a suggestion after one of the songs, and I saw it was sports and mental health, and so I listened to one episode, and then I listened to a second episode, and then a third episode, and then I eventually turned around and went home and asked for help soon after that. And I just had to tell you that this happened to me. And I'm like reading this, and I very rarely get emotional anymore because I've talked about this stuff so much. But I am like bawling reading this because this is like exact like your question of like what it's like. That is why it's so important to me. I mean, to hear stories like that, it's crazy to me, but it's so cool because I know what some of my favorite artists or favorite athletes have done for me when I was going through some moment, or
Yeah.
my favorite team. Just it sounds so stupid to people maybe that don't love sports, but if the Bengals win a game, it can really save my week. So this season was really really tough, but yeah, it's really I'm really grateful that I have this opportunity. It's super humbling and really, really cool.
I'm a Bears, Cubs, and Bulls fan, so that hasn't helped very much lately.
Yeah. All right. Well, you still got a couple of championships that I've never seen. So, but
True.
it has been rough of recent. Yes.
uh, where do you want to see your mission, say, in the next 3 to 5 years?
I sound crazy, but I want this to be the biggest, mental health platform in the world. We're 2 years in. It started with me quitting my job, living in my mom's basement, my brother designing the logo, and just starting with a couple players that I knew in the NFL, and now it's grown to this. And so I don't think it's crazy to say that I hope that maybe in 2 years you see this on Netflix, and we have an educational curriculum that we're working on now that's maybe in schools. That's really where I see it. I reach out to everyone like as much as I can and be respectful of their time, but like I'm not afraid to email President Obama or Taylor Swift and their team, and
Right.
guess what? I get no's, but at least they got back to me. Like, and the worst thing that can happen is maybe 2 or 3 years from now, in that moment we're talking about, then it happens on Netflix or ESPN. And it's not because I want to be selfishly like some famous person. It's no, they have like tens of millions of people that idolize them that might be struggling too,
Right.
and they don't maybe not are not normally like as vulnerable as they would be, sitting down with me having that conversation. And so that's I think where my goal is just to be able to keep saving lives. I mean, I want this to be when people hear the mental game, I don't want it to be about me. I want it to be about making people feel less alone and
Yeah.
realize that vulnerability is a strength and that we can help each other. So yeah, I think that's where I see it. I mean, I love what I do now, and I just hope it keeps growing and growing so we can help more and more people.
How can people reach out and learn more?
Yeah, so I mean, if you just search the mental game on social media or me, Brandon Saho on social media, you'll find it really easy. YouTube, Apple, Spotify, that's where the podcast lives. We have new episodes coming out here in a few weeks, and going to go through the whole year. But yeah, just it might be something that you're not comfortable talking about or looking into yet. But just there's solo episodes where it's just me talking about moments in my life. We have episodes with maybe somebody like Terry Crews, Kate Flannery from The Office, Kirk Herbstreit from ESPN, people that maybe you don't think would be vulnerable normally, and it can kind of help you through that path. And then, like you mentioned, the touring. I'm going to be all over the country this year. That's my favorite thing again to do. So if I'm at a college or an event nearby, please come say hi. If you think like, hey, maybe this would be something good for my school, for our office, like I love the school visits. We probably do those the most at high schools and colleges, but I'll tell you what, the corporate visits is the craziest, but in the best way, thing I do, because you'll be sitting in a room, and this has happened multiple times now, where I'll share my story, and I always do a Q&A at every event, like it's a town hall. They ask mental health questions, I try to give tips, answer things about the podcast, all that jazz. But when it's adults, for some reason, those questions just turn into stories where it will be. I'm not going to say the company name, but I've been sitting in a leadership room with about 50 managers at like a 9 to 5 suit and tie job. And about 2 minutes into the questions, one woman stands up and talks about how she was sexually assaulted as a kid and it's affected her whole life. And the next guy stands up about how he had attempted suicide. The next person stands up and they lost their son to suicide earlier. I mean, I had never experienced something like that before. And again, it goes back to creating that safe space where we can relate to each other. And so, like, that's the most special thing that I get to do. Again, broken record, but like those moments, it's like, wow. That's when I cry. That's when I get emotional because it's like, wow, I thought I was the only one, and now we're all helping each other.